Mr. Torgue Flexington, or to his friends Mr. Torgue, is a businessman who loves one thing more than anything else, his grandma, but also explosions! But which Torgue weapon is the best in the entire history of the Borderlands franchise?
And number 10 is...
I feel like this gun is on every single top 10 list that I'm making right now, but damned if it doesn't deserve to be. The Double Anarchy was manufactured by multiple companies in Borderlands 1, and I hope that somebody from Gearbox sees this and says, hey, let's bring this back, because everybody loved it. This gun was a non-unique, non-legendary weapon that shot what feels like a million bullets in a second. It had great accuracy while hip firing or while aimed down sight, and if you found one at any point of any playthrough, you were pretty much guaranteed that it was going to last you at least 5 to 10 levels without any problem whatsoever. Since it was not a red text item, you could get this thing from random chests, world drops, or vending machines.
Number 9!
Oh, the Flakker. It's gone through quite the adventure on Borderlands 3. At launch, it was one of the most powerful weapons in the game, and everybody was using it to obliterate everything in sight. And then Gearbox hit it with a nerf on October 17th, just 1 month after release, reducing the damage by an astounding 33%. And making it consume the entire mag when fired. This did not go over well at all. Then on October 24th, 1 week later, they lowered the mag size to just 1, but reduced the ammo cost from 5 per shot down to just 1. This was obviously an attempt to keep us from spamming this powerful gun, but instead, everybody just chucked their Flakkers off of cliffs and moved on to the next toy. That all changed a year later in November of 2020, when Gearbox went on a bit of a hot streak with quality buffs and improvements on the game, and on November 9th they increased the Flakker's damage by 50%, essentially undoing that 33% damage nerf and also adding a buff on top of it. They also increased the fire rate by 23% and added a 15 mag size, making the Flakker very strong once again. The life of the Borderlands 3 Flakker needs to be an example for the Gearbox weapons team going forward about balance at launch and how the perception of nerfs can absolutely do lasting harm to the game. All of that said, try the Flakker now, especially on Moze and Amara, but be careful not to blow yourself up in the process, even though Mr. Torgue would like that. The Flakker drops from Manvark in Conrad's hold on Pandora, located just outside the door from the slaughter shaft.
Number 8!
At number 8 on this list, staying on the subject of huge buffs in Borderlands 3, let's talk about the Hive. This formerly blue unique launcher from Borderlands 2 made its return, but as a legendary in Borderlands 3. Unlike its predecessor though, this one is vastly easier to obtain, dropping from Princess Tarantella II in the Splinterlands on Pandora. From launch of Borderlands 3, it was a decent launcher, but the gimmick limited how useful it could be. Basically, shoot this launcher and out comes a drone that stops on contact with anything, rises up into the air, sending out additional tracking rockets that deal your weapon's element as splash damage. Shortly after that, the original drone shot will also explode, also dealing weapon element splash damage. This obviously makes the Hive a very fun mobbing launcher. Just shoot it into a crowd and you can wander off while they all die. Also, unlike the Borderlands 2 version, this one can come in both corrosive and radiation variants. But what really pushed this launcher into greatness was the buff that I was talking about earlier. In August of 2021, a full 2 years after the game's release, Gearbox buffed the Hive by a ridiculous 133%. Suddenly, this mobbing launcher was also doing well versus bosses and mobs. Combine it with a strong splash damage boosting build and you can really make Mr. Torgue proud with all of those explosions. Or take it a step further and pair it with something like the Guardian Angel from the Vault cards. Just shoot the Hive, swap to the Guardian Angel, put distance between yourself and the enemies, and watch all the dots on the map disappear.
On to lucky number 7!
Why not go ahead and toss in another gun that got a huge buff in Borderlands 3? At number 7 is the Roizen's Thorns. This Torgue pistol has 2 firing options, standard and sticky, which is kind of the Torgue gimmick in Borderlands 3, but more on that a little bit later on in this list. With the Roizen's, you want to leave this one on the standard firing mode since that will give you a lot more damage. This gun shoots out 1 corrosive gyrojet from the middle and 4 fire orbs that surround that projectile, all of which will explode on contact, dealing elemental splash damage. damage. That lends itself well, once again, to a splash damage boosted Amara or Mose, but I've been known to let my Zane clone play around with the Roizens occasionally too. And much like the Hive, this gun was good at launch, but was never great until it received 2 buffs, and they were a year apart. The first was on March 12th, 2020, when they gave it a 53.3% weapon damage buff. Decent, but it didn't really send this gun into this gun effing rocks territory. Then, almost a year to the day later, Gearbox said screw it and gave this gun an additional 100% weapon damage buff. And now it suddenly felt like we were back on Borderlands 2, playing with a certain Torgue pistol that you're going to see later on this list. And just like the Hive that we covered right before this weapon, the Roizens also drops from Princess Tarantella, so happy hunting.
And now for number 6.
Coming in at number 6 is the Prompt Critical, a Torgue pistol that shoots 3 or 4 gyrojets, depending on whether or not you got the double penetrating prefix. Those gyrojets explode on impact, dealing the weapon's element as splash damage. This gun also has a sticky fire mode, like most Torgue weapons in Borderlands 3. If you can stick a bunch to an enemy, then the explosive damage is increased for each one that is stuck to them. Generally, I like to keep this one on sticky firing mode because the sticky round will hit and deal splash damage immediately, then also explode again after that, dealing even more damage. Now, I know a lot of Torgue gear is best suited for Mose and Amara, but this gun is amazing on everybody. It instantly melts most mobs. It's decent damage versus most bosses. The Prompt Critical is just fun to use. Now for the bad part though. To farm this gun, you're going to need to farm Evil Lilith in the Psycho Krieg DLC, or hope for it to drop as a world drop in that DLC. And let me tell you, the Evil Lilith fight sucks so much that I actually will suggest you farm this from anywhere else in that DLC.
Number 5.
Now let's shift back to Borderlands 2 for the next item on this list. At number 5 is the Ogre from Borderlands 2. In a game where most assault rifles are just plain abysmal, the Ogre shines as one of the few exceptions. The Ogre has been around since Borderlands 1, but it's at its prime in Borderlands 2. This thing fires explosive projectiles that explode on impact, dealing explosive grenade damage, obviously making this a primo Axton weapon, but it's fun on every character really. The Ogre also has a 25% chance to fire twice, but where this gun gets really crazy is that it has a chance every 6 seconds to buff the player that's holding it for 6 seconds, and this buff will persist even if you swap to another weapon, allowing you to do some pretty wild stuff. The buffs you get on this are 20% damage, 50% fire rate, 100% reload speed, projectiles will ricochet off of surfaces, and 50% chance to fire twice, which will increase to 75% when paired with the base effect on the gun. But even without worrying about the buff and just using this weapon as it is, it's arguably the best all-around assault rifle in the game. Consistent damage, good fire rate, just a fun gun to use. The main problem with this gun is how to get it. It can only drop from Warlord's Slog and Myrtleyn's Temple in the Assault on Dragon Keep DLC, and sadly, he's pretty deep in there.
That's what she said.
And this gun only has a 21.5% drop chance. So if you're after a good version of this gun with, say, like a matching grip, for example, it might take a while. The Ogre did make a return in Borderlands 3, and it's much easier to obtain, but it just doesn't have that same oomph as the Borderlands 2 version, even after 2 separate buffs.
Okay, here we are at number 4.
Coming at number 4 is the Redline from Borderlands 3. Oh man, I love this gun. The Redline is a Torgue shotgun that fires insanely fast. When you reload it, it will trigger the explosions of the stickies, and each stuck gyrojet will increase the damage by 5%. So with a 12 round burst of these, you're going to increase your damage by 60%. Increase your mag size with artifacts and class mods to get even more out of this gun. But where you can really make this gun do wild things is when you pair it with another weapon like the Guardian Angel or the Unforgiven. If you're using it on an enemy where you can easily apply it to critical hit spots like Graveyard for example, then you're going to want to swap to the Unforgiven to boost that crit damage bonus. Otherwise, the Guardian Angel is just an always great damage bonus that you can use in any situation. Fire all the rounds out of the Redline, and before you start reloading, immediately swap to the Guardian Angel and just watch enemies explode into pink mist. But unlike other Torgue weapons that benefit Mose and Amara the most, the Redline gets the best use on Flak using Megavore and Fadeaway. Pop Fadeaway and use Gorillas in the Mist to not have Fade end after 3 shots. Apply a ton of sticky rounds with the Redline, and while still in Fadeaway, swap to the Guardian Angel. This will trigger the explosions of the Redline, and it will melt most nearly anything in the game with the right build and setup. If you'd like to see the build that I'm using for this, then check out my Destroyer of Worlds Flak or even my base game Flak, both at the link in the upper right hand corner.
And number 3.
Coming in at number 3 is the Sword Explosion. Now, I know there's going to be some Borderlands 2 guys in the comment section saying this should be number 2 or maybe even number 1. And you know what? You can make a case for this being the strongest Torgue weapon overall. Using 2 ammo per shot, this shotgun shoots out exploding swords that explode on impact. That was a lot of explosions, so Mr. Torgue's probably smiling right now. These surprisingly do gun damage in the area of effect. Once the swords hit, those split into 3 extra swords that also explode, but those deal 70% grenade damage as the area of effect damage. This combination of damage types allows you to do some pretty wild damage with this thing across all the Vault Hunters. Obtainable from a side quest called The Sword and the Stoner in the Unassuming Docks in the Assault on Dragon Keep DLC, this gun is worth resetting using cloud save farming or read-only farming until you get the casual prefix, matching Torgue grip, a foregrip, and a Hyperion stock, just like this image courtesy of lootlemon.com. Definitely check out lootlemon.com if you need any information about any of the Borderlands games. Now, I have a guide linked in the description of this video to help you guys on console to do cloud save farming, and also a video for PC players so you can do read-only farming. You can also get the Unicorn Explosion from the Commander Lilith DLC, as it is just a reskinned Sword Explosion, but I'll just point you to my guide on how to get that in the upper right hand corner of the screen.
And here we are at number 2.
At number 2 is the Plague Bearer from Borderlands 3, and anybody who has ever used this launcher before knows exactly why. You shoot it above the heads of enemies in a room and it'll slowly fly over them, sending out additional tracking orbs that hit enemies with splash damage and whatever element you have on this gun. The main orb shot from the gun will also hit and create a singularity, pulling in enemies and then exploding, also dealing the weapon's element as splash damage. Essentially, this gun is like a combination of the Hive, a singularity grenade, and the damage of a Norfleet all rolled into one. For bosses or single targets, shoot near them or directly at them and let the gun take care of the rest. The Plague Bearer is a Mayhem 6 and above weapon, only obtainable from the Warden in the Anvil on Eden 6 at a 16.5% drop chance. It can come in every possible element, allowing you to have a version for every situation or boss, and like the Hive, you can shoot this thing and swap to something like the Guardian Angel and increase the overall damage with 0 effort.
Honorable mention!
My honorable mentions for Torgue contain some absolute beasts that just missed the list. The Ahab, obviously with a Pimpernel Sal, Creamer, Carnage, Kerblaster, Unicorn Explosion, World Burn, Peak Opener, Moonscaper, Lob, Scoville, Tiggs Boom, Contain Blast, and the Borderlands 1 Cobra. But I also want to send a special shout out to the OG Evil Smasher before it was nerfed into oblivion.
Number 1.
Finally, at number 1 is the Unkempt Herald, and this is absolutely zero surprise to anybody that has ever used it. The Unkempt Herald on Borderlands 2 is so highly regarded for a number of reasons. First, it's obviously very strong. It doesn't need the help of things like the B shield, and probably the best part is how easy it is to get repeatedly. In base game Borderlands 2, you can get it from Savage Lee very early on in Three Horns Divide. That farm then becomes level locked until True Vault Hunter mode, but honestly, the normal mode Herald will probably last you almost all the way through to True Vault Hunter mode. The same thing happens in True Vault Hunter mode with the Herald farm, but once you get to Ultimate mode, Savage Lee will match your level constantly, meaning you can get a Herald at level 50, level 55, 60, 65, etc., making this one of the easiest weapons to replace, and if you decide to do the OP levels, it's also one of the easiest items to get for each of your OP level increases. But I think it's also worth mentioning how good the Borderlands 3 Herald is. Obviously, in Borderlands 2, the best version is the double penetrating prefix, which gives you more projectiles per shot, but on Borderlands 3, they never added that prefix to this gun, and the ×3 variant gives the same number of projectiles as the ×4 version, which they just never fixed. I'd honestly make the case that the Borderlands 3 version, despite those issues, is actually better than the Borderlands 2 version, but it does require DLC 3, The Bounty of Blood, to obtain it, and it lacks full auto like its Borderlands 2 counterpart. It does have all the various elements as options though, and as much as I think the Borderlands 3 version is better overall, it's really hard to deny just how impactful the Borderlands 2 Herald is on that game in general. For that reason, I rank the Borderlands 2 Unkempt Herald as the king of Torgue weapons in the Borderlands franchise. So let me know in the comment section down below which Torgue weapon do you think is the best or strongest overall. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing for more Borderlands top 10s, guides, playthroughs, and challenge runs. Thank you guys for watching. Take care.